Most people grow up believing that money is the central resource of life, the thing that determines freedom, stability, and opportunity. Yet if you quietly observe how people actually live, a different pattern begins to emerge. One where money often moves in circles while something far more limited quietly drains away in the background. Imagine two individuals earning the same income over a decade, both making similar financial decisions, both saving modestly, both avoiding major financial mistakes, yet one of them feels increasingly constrained while the other feels a growing sense of control. And the difference between them is not their income, nor their investments, but how they unknowingly allocate their time. The core idea is simple but often overlooked. Money can be stored, invested, borrowed, and even recovered after loss. But time moves in only one direction, and once exchanged, it cannot be reclaimed. Psychologically, this distinction is easy to ignore because money is visible. It has numbers, balances, transactions. While time feels abstract, it does not sit in an account or appear in statements. So the brain naturally prioritizes optimizing what it can measure, even if that means neglecting what is actually more valuable. This creates a subtle behavioral shift where people begin to evaluate decisions based on price rather than time cost, choosing cheaper options that consume more hours, taking on commitments that lock future schedules. When we bring math into this, the trade-off becomes clearer. Consider an hourly framework where your time has an implied value, not necessarily your wage, but a broader valuation based on your total life capacity. And suddenly, decisions like commuting longer distances for slightly lower rent, managing complex finances to save small percentages, or taking on additional obligations begin to reveal hidden costs. For example, if a decision saves a fixed amount of money but requires hundreds of additional hours over time, the effective return may be far lower than it appears, especially when those hours could have been used for skill development, rest, or higher leverage opportunities that compound differently than small financial optimizations. At a systemic level, modern economic structures often encourage this imbalance by rewarding visible productivity and measurable output, while quietly absorbing time through subscriptions, recurring responsibilities, and fragmented attention demands, creating a loop where individuals feel financially active but temporally constrained. Historically, shifts in economic systems have often followed this pattern, where initial stages reward labor and time exchange directly, but later stages increasingly reward those who can decouple income from time, not through shortcuts or guarantees, but through systems, ownership, and leverage that reduce the need for continuous time input. Understanding this does not mean rejecting money, but reframing it as a tool rather than the goal, where the real objective becomes preserving and allocating time in ways that create flexibility and resilience rather than simply maximizing numerical balances. This leads to a subtle identity shift, from someone who manages money to someone who manages life capacity, where financial decisions are evaluated not just on their immediate cost or return, but on how they shape future time freedom, energy, and cognitive space. Over time, this perspective changes behavior in small but meaningful ways. People begin to question whether a discount is worth the added complexity, whether a purchase reduces or increases future obligations, and whether certain forms of income are sustainable, not financially, but temporally. In the end, the shift is quiet, almost invisible, because the external markers may look the same: income levels, expenses, even savings rates. But internally, the experience changes, moving from a constant negotiation with time to a more deliberate allocation of it. And in that transition, the original assumption begins to reverse. Not that money controls life, but that time, carefully protected and intentionally used, becomes the underlying structure that shapes everything else.
Hey there, welcome to James Invest. I'm glad you stopped by today.